Hi, in today's video, we're going to teach you to deal with country roads and bends. Now, when it comes to this subject, realistically, looking and identifying road markings and road signs really does come to the forefront so that if you're driving on a country road of a night, you'll recognize if there's a bend and be able to deal with it. So, our road signs then. Well, this first one means there's a bend coming up to the right. The next one to it tells us there's a bend to the left. This one tells us there's a bend coming up, but the first one is going to the right, the second one is to the left. And then the final double bend sign tells us on this occasion the first one is to the left, the second bend is to the right. Then we have the black and white chevrons. Now, these arrows tell us that there's a bend coming up, and the way that they're pointing tells you it's either to the left or to the right. And the more black and white chevrons you have, the sharper the bend is. So here's a real life example. We're coming down the road. Now, here's our road sign on the left telling us there's a bend coming up. They advise that it's be done at 30. You notice it's in a highlighted sign. That means lots of people miss the fact that there's a sharp bend coming up. The fact that the speed limit is in an oblong box is advice. So if you're driving a 40-ton lorry, you're coming down here, it's November, it's -9 and the snow on the ground, you may want to do 30 or less. You may be able to do it quicker, but it's generally advice that is worth following. So we'll see how we do as we come down. Now, as we head down the road, we can see already in the distance that there are black and white chevrons. And if we look at those chevrons, we can see there's a lot of them all together. And as we said, the more black and white chevrons there are, the sharper the bend is. And we can already see that it is quite a bend. We can't see round the corner at this point. So we follow it down. There's still more black and white chevrons, which means it's a very sharp bend. And that's why this barrier over on the right, you notice it's brand new, because people just come flying up. They turn the wheel. If it's a wet day, if there's wet leaves or a patch of oil or some ice, the car just goes flying forward anyway. Gravity takes over and they just go straight into that barrier. And that's why the sign on approach is there, the advice sign, and the fact that it's in a highlighted box as well. Now, as we come round the corner, we can see we've still got black and white chevrons, but now they're further apart, which means the bend carries on, but it's not so sharp as it was at the beginning. And this is the benefit of looking and knowing what the signs and the markings tell us. So what about road markings then? Well, we might see something like this saying slow. Now, this doesn't actually mean you need to slow down. Again, it's advice. It just means, or you can think of it as meaning, the road's got history. At some point, somebody's come down, there's perhaps a hidden driveway, a junction, a crossroads where people have stopped and pulled out. Again, we're going to see this in action. So we're coming down. Now in front of us, we've got two signs saying slow. Now this is a 60-mile-an-hour road. The reason these are here is there's a crossroads coming up in front. So at some point, somebody's come down and stopped to turn left or right at the crossroads, or somebody's pulled out. However, we can see it's completely empty. There's nothing there. So in this instance, we don't need to follow the advice. But then we've got the road sign on the left telling us we've got that double bend that we mentioned earlier, one to the left and one to the right. So looking at the road markings and signs can really help you think and plan ahead when you're driving on country roads. When we've seen the bend, how do we then deal with it? Well, if the bend is going round to the left, like our top picture, we want to try and stay towards the right of our lane. That will give us a better view around the corner. So if there are other vehicles, if there are pedestrians there, we're going to be able to see them. If we're too close to that left-hand side, it would take us by surprise. And the same is true if the bend is going round to the right. Can we stay to the left of our lane? And that again will give us a better view around the corner for any traffic or pedestrians, because again, you may find them walking on a country road just the same as in the town. So what helps us deal with the bends is what's called the vanishing point, or the arrowhead method. And the way we do that, we look down to the furthest point of the road ahead that we can see. So you can see we look across towards what is marked as B, which is the furthest point that we can see in our line of sight. If that point keeps moving away from us, that means we're doing the right speed for the road. If that point isn't moving away from us, then we need to slow down because we're going to try and do it at too high a speed. And that's why it's called reading the road. But let me explain this further. In our top diagram, the furthest point that we can see is just to the car in front there. So that's our point. As we carry on round the bend, the second picture shows that we've now got a gap in front of that car. And then the third picture shows there's a gap and we can see further into the distance. So that point is going away from us and opening up. Here in the second instance, we can just about see the car in front in the top picture, but then in the bottom picture, that car has now disappeared. So that focal point, that reference point, isn't going away from us, so we would need to slow down. Let's go back to the bend that we did earlier. Now we can see ahead this bend, and we're looking at the furthest point of the bend that we can see round. And as we come down, do you notice it's not really opening up? We can't see round the bend properly. Therefore, we need to slow down at this point until it does, because it means we're coming up too quickly for the bend. But now as we come round the sharpest part of the bend, do you notice as we look into the distance, that point is now opening up and continually going away from us. We can keep seeing more and more as we come round. And that means we're doing the right speed for the road and the right speed for that particular bend. Because even now it's opening up further, which is why those black and white chevrons were further apart. So we look at the furthest point from us, and if it continues to open up and go away, we're doing the right speed. So we look at the furthest point here on our country road. Do you notice it's continually opening up? We can see more and more as we're going round it. Therefore, we know we're doing the right speed. And this is why it's called the arrowhead method, or the vanishing point, because you just imagine it as an arrowhead pointing into it. Now on this one, again, although we've got a black and white chevron, which tells us there's a bit more of a bend, but it's not too sharp. Again, it's continually going away from us. And this one to the left, we're looking. That hedge is going away and opening up. We're seeing more and more of the road, so we're doing the right speed. The reason for this is if we don't look at those signs and markings and we get this situation where we have the tractor in front of us and we think, oh, I'm going to overtake it, we won't realise that there's a sharp double bend coming up. We'll try and overtake just as that bicycle and the car behind it come round that corner, and there we are on the wrong side of the road. Looking at the road signs is especially needed on country roads because you've got a huge array of different animals depending on which part of the country you're in, such as is mentioned in that top picture: sheep, horses, deer, cattle crossing. You may come across horses. Remember, not only do we have to leave them as much room as possible, we have to go as slow as possible around them as well, because we wouldn't want to startle the horse. So you've got to be aware of that and whether it is actually safe to try and get past them at a lower speed. With regards to farm traffic, you have to be aware at some points the tractors, the different farm machinery, just going to come out from those side field entrances. They could bring with them mud. So if you see a caution, mud on the road, be aware that, especially if you're coming up to a bend and there's mud on the road, you're going to have very little grip, especially if it's raining or the mud is wet. You will also face situations that you probably won't face when you're driving through towns or cities. If you're going through a village and you go onto a country lane, the lane may narrow, but the vehicles coming the other way could actually be bigger, such as tractors or the milk tankers going around the farms collecting the milk. Whereas normally two cars may be able to pass, it would be a better idea to just sit there before it got narrow and then wait for the tractor to come through. On top of that, you've got stuff that you probably will never find in a town or the city, such as ducks crossing the road or geese crossing the road. Does that actually happen? Well, let's have a look. Here, as we're driving down on the right, we've got the sign saying, "Beware of the ducks." Is this a thing? Well, we carry on driving, and round the corner just after the sign, we get all the ducks and geese walking across. It's at this point we cue the music. Why would they want to cross there? I don't know. They must be quackers. So anyway, moving on. Occasionally on country roads, if it's a single track road, you'll have what's called passing places, which are cutouts where if a car comes the other way, you can stop and wait to let them through. However, a quick word of caution on this. If it's coming into winter or it's wet, you need to look at the passing place, because if it's just boggy, it's muddy, it's just grass, you don't want to pull onto it, get bogged down, and then have to wait for the AA or a tractor to come along to pull you out. So it might actually be that you need to reverse back. It could be that the passing place is on the other side of the road. So if the car was coming, you could stop level with the passing place on the opposite side of the road. The car could come up, pull into the passing place, and then you could carry on past it. With bends on country roads as well, if they are sharp, it's worth remembering you just never know what's coming the other way. So in our top picture, we can actually see there's a 40-ton lorry coming round the corner, or about to, but in the bottom picture, we won't be able to see it. So in this case, the highway code does say that either sounding your horn, or if it's a night time, putting your main beams on, flashing your lights is acceptable, just to let the other vehicles know that you are approaching, and they may actually do the same for you. So again, just being aware and thinking and planning what if there is something coming will help you a lot in these situations. As we've said, it could be a lorry, it could be a tractor. So we've just got to be aware of these things each time. Another thing we may not have encountered is what's called a ford, where the river or the stream crosses the road. Now, sometimes there may be nothing. Other times there may be quite a depth of water, so you need to be careful going through them if that's the case, because every winter you see on the front page of the paper someone who's tried to go through, the water's gone into their engine, or they've tried going through really quick and water and electrics doesn't mix well, and then their car has come to a juddering stop in the middle of this stream or bit of river, and then they've got to wait for the recovery to come and get them. We have a village local to us with a ford through it, and most of the time it's very low or non-existent. However, during the summer, when you got the thunderstorms, the extreme heat thunderstorms where it would really tip down, and the local youngsters at that point would love it because they get on their bodyboards, just get into the ford, follow the flow downstream, and it would cross the road, and they would cross the road on these bodyboards. So you actually had to tell your learners to watch out for people coming down the ford on bodyboards, which is definitely something that doesn't often happen in the middle of town. One of the things on the more open rural roads are what's called hidden dips, and this is where you can't see what's coming from the other direction. So it's good to look out for the sign, because as you can see in the bottom picture, if you want to overtake the lorry, it looks clear, but if you look on the top picture, you can't actually see what's coming up from the dip on the other side of the road. So just as you pull out to go and overtake, that person would appear, and again, we'd be the ones on the wrong side of the road. So looking and planning in advance is definitely needed on country roads. So we hope that this video has helped you to deal with country roads and bends a little better. Don't forget to leave us a comment, let us know what you think. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel. The link for the briefing folder is in the description below. So if you're training to become a driving instructor, or you get in private practice but you'd like a little more help with this subject, these folders are ideal for that. My name's Chris from Driver Training Limited. Remember, keep well, drive safely, and we'll see you all again in our next video.